Welcome to Season 2 of In the Vine Dating Podcast with host Melissa Chavez, joined by Yesenia, Denise, and Shekinah. This season, we'll be discussing different topics such as premarital intercourse, soul ties, and the importance of servanthood. And of course, discussing our upcoming dating mixers and events. For more information, you can visit our website at www.inthevinedating.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to show your support and like, share, and subscribe.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to In the Vine Dating Podcast. It's your host, Melissa Chavez, and with me I have...
Yessie, Shekinah,
Denise.
And today we are just set up for such a great episode. It's going to be really good. We've been laughing nonstop for the past 30 takes.
Yes.
So this is the best one we've got so far.
Yeah.
So we're going for it. So how was your ladies' week? I'll start with Denise.
It was great. My husband and I celebrated our 9-year anniversary. So that was
9 years? That's
9
amazing.
years, yes. So yeah, we just got to do that. So it was cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thanks.
Yes, congratulations.
Thanks, ladies.
That's incredible. That's a huge milestone.
It is. Can't wait for the 10, though.
Wow, you're just going to hijack my question.
Yes, I am.
Do you guys have a huge trip planned?
We do. We do have something planned. He doesn't know about it yet, but he'll find out.
Okay. Cool. What about you, Shekinah?
I had a very unplanned weekend, a very unnecessarily difficult weekend.
Great wording.
Wow, you should have a podcast.
Thanks. No, it was actually really good. I accomplished a lot. But my plan was to rest and go on a hike and just enjoy nature. But then last minute, I looked at my wall and I thought, I'm gonna put shelves up. And I thought it would just be a quick project. It wasn't a quick project. It took all weekend, so
Aw.
I'm a little sore, but it's done, and my wall looks great,
It
and I
looks
love
really
it. I was like,
good.
I love
Does
it. It
it?
looks great. I'm glad I got it over with, but I'm a little bummed that I missed out on a restful weekend, to be honest. So
That's amazing.
I'm tired today, but again, I accomplished something, so I can't be too upset with myself.
Good job, Shekinah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I saw you posted that you purchased a stud finder.
You did. I did. I
you
have
were-
not found a stud yet.
Yeah. She did say
I'm
waiting for
still
the
going
dad jokes.
around.
Yeah.
He's out there somewhere.
Man, I was, no, I'm not going to go. Okay, you, talk to me. How was your weekend?
I wish I would know what you were saying, but my weekend was great. You took me out to celebrate my birthday. We got some coffee. We got some tacos. We went shopping. We went home and we were hanging out at my house.
Yes.
Had talks with my husband.
Yes.
Very fun. Yes.
It was fun. Yessie, just so you guys know, Yessie has such an anointing on her life to find the best deals.
She does.
She's like, oh, I found this at so-and-so. Oh, I found this. How much was it? $4. And then I go and I have no luck. Absolutely no luck. So, Yessie, thank you so much for sharing your anointing.
I'm sorry. Next time.
Next time.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
What did you do?
I hung out with you and I took the Dusko girls out, which that was cool. And those girls really know, they know how to live life.
They do.
You know what I mean? I learned so much from them. And I hung out with Zaraya.
Yeah.
So that was great because I haven't spent time with the girlies in a long time. So that was a lot of fun. And now we're here filming this podcast after an eventful weekend. I feel a little bit delulu, but we're about to have a good conversation. So yes.
Yes, we are. We're going to have a great conversation. Great
Yes.
table talk amongst us four.
That's right.
And
As
our
always.
amazing audience.
Welcome to our table. Okay, so last week I talked about how we were gonna do an episode about biblical femininity. And so, however, before we dive into the conversation, I feel like we can't really progress into it until we talk about the first woman ever created on this planet Earth, right? And so that's Eve. And so Eve has a really bad rep, A lot of men, even women, they pass blame on Eve, and rightfully so. She went through her things, but I think we can learn a lot about her story. One of the things that you're always saying is how influential women are, right? And so I think we see that really depicted in the story of Eve. And so, what do you ladies, do you guys have any thoughts on that? Any revelation that you have about that? that you would like to share with our listeners?
Processing. No, Eve, you're right. She does get a bad rep, because like obviously whenever it's our monthly, we're immediately going, dang it, Eve,
When I get to heaven.
Yeah, when I get to heaven, I'll have words with you. But no, the reality of it is that the mother of everyone, of humankind, and I love. You're gonna share a quote later that you shared with me later. I would say it, but I can't remember it. But it was brilliant. I loved it. But Eve, we have to remember that she really was. She's the mother of all humankind, and there's a respect in that. And she walked with God.
Yeah,
she was a woman that walked with God, and for that alone should be recognized.
Yeah. So the quote that she's talking about is actually Adam was created in the garden, right? And so we all know that story. And so Adam was created in the garden, and then it says that God looked at Adam and was like, it's not good for man to be alone. So take that to the bank, am I right? And then it said that he gave him Eve, right, as a helper. Not as a lesser than, not as somebody that wouldn't amount to equal success, but as a helper, right? Somebody that to co-labor with. And so I read a quote from a book that I recently listened to, and she said, Adam by himself was just man, but the moment that he was given Eve, he was the human race. And she talked about how Eve was given to him not as a subordinate, but as an amplifier. And so I was like, wow, that is so amazing, because it's true. Like when a man and a woman come together, the gifting that is inside of a man becomes amplified, right? And now the purpose of the woman, I'm not saying that we don't have purpose if we're single, but now that has a vessel, right? Yeah. to be able to function and work in. And so I think that's amazing, because before I go into that, like, do you guys have any remarks on that?
I think it's beautiful. No, that's amazing. I mean, there's so many different avenues that I can get into and I want to get into, but for time's sake, I think we'll just stick to the script. But But no, you're good. Yeah. I love the way you said that about the amplifying and the human race. I never saw it like that he was man and then they became the human race.
Yeah, I thought that was so good too. And, us women, like, we have an innate design, right? Whether we use it for good or evil, God has given us an original design inside of us, whether we're Christian, Muslim, whatever, like it's who we are. Right. It's our design. And so what I find the most interesting, right, is because, back in the feminism movement, and you and I have talked about this, it's really how our friendship got started in a lot of ways, where we started dissecting the feminism movement and all of that. And what a lot of people don't know is that the feminism movement started from women that, of course, wanted the sexual liberation, but that started overseas, right? That was like alive for hundreds of years before it actually made its way to America and it took the shape that it took here. And so what I find the most is that it was broken women that created feminism. It was women that were in sexual affairs. It was women that lost babies. It was women who felt like their career was affected. And so what's crazy to me, is like in the 1960s and in the 70s, women started getting the sense of liberation by going out into the workforce. And what's crazy to me is that our very design is now being used to something in let's say in a business setting, right, that's not going to yield the same fruit that having a family would. And so I'm not saying it's either one or the other, but it's because of the family that women find their business making, the Proverbs 31, right, that we've talked about oftentimes. So what do you think about that? We can, honestly, like you said, we can go on so many tangents. So whatever you want to bring to the table, like, let's just do it. Let's air it out here.
Yeah, I think when the men were out to war, women had to obviously step out of the household and try to make a living, right? But what also happened in that time, and I don't know if many people know, is that when kids were being homeschooled, now the kids had to be sent to like the school institutions. Not that they weren't, but they were obviously sent more often. And not only that, but what started to happen, because dad was in war, mom was too busy trying to make a living. So what started to happen is that Bibles were taken out of school, prayers were taken out of school, the 10 Commandments were taken out of school. A lot of those things, prominent things, morality, the author of morals, which was God, was no longer invited or welcomed in the home. And there is, and I should have written down the actual cases that happened during those times in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. that really, it was like a trickle effect. Like the system knew what to do. The system knew to take advantage of such a vulnerable place for both the family unit, or for the family unit. Yeah. And they started to infiltrate the schools. How? By removing God from schools. And so what happened is, now dad is overseas, right? Rightfully so, fighting. Mom is trying to make a living. So now who are the kids being educated by? The school systems. Right. And what was happening at that time was that God was no longer the moral foundation. Yeah. So they started to infiltrate the children. And now, I mean, you can see how that affected generations to come.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one of the things that also took place during that time, because, one of the things that I've also read is that a lot of people romanticize like what was going on in the 1950s even, right? Like the dynamic of the family unit, how, we're like, if only we could go back to that, where it's like, the sock hop dances and all that jazz. But what people tend to base that on is like the novelty of it, right? Not understanding what's really going on in that. So you're right. Like the system really pounced on what was going on culturally and used that as a way to start implementing their plans. Right. And so, and what I find the most fascinating is that if people were to do a deep dive and look up those cases, it really took one person to make a shift in the way that society will move from that moment forward. And so that really speaks to the power that we have, right, as women. Like the fact that not just women, men also have this kind of power, but for the sake of the conversation and the topic today, it's so important. And in the Proverbs, it talks about how children should wear a woman's their mother's advice as pearls on their neck and as a beautiful garment and as jewelry. And that is because the role of a woman is to teach the morality. It's to teach, and it's the man's job to enforce it, right? To overtake it, to nurture that in a way. Am I off on that?
Yeah. So I can give examples of how we've been taught, right? So it's like dad obviously lays a foundation. What do we want to like? For example, he and I. We know what we want to teach. We wanted to, he won't like when we got premarital counseling. Okay, we're gonna homeschool our children. We're gonna teach them ABCD, right? For example. And now my job is like, okay, I got the instruction. Now it is my job to teach it. But he also comes in and enforces it. He also does Bible stuff with the girls. But so it's like a team effort. Yeah. It's a team. But because I'm at home with the kids most of the time, I am the most influential in that sense amongst teaching my kids, morality, things of that nature. And but it definitely starts with the head of the household laying down the foundation, the game plan, the vision. So because he takes the vision from God, brings it into the household, lays out the blueprint, the strategy, and we do that as a team, right? Because we both have input, and then from there, it's my job to execute the vision. And obviously, he comes alongside, and I come alongside him, so it's like a team unit. Yeah, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah,
ladies.
No, I. It's funny because going into this conversation, I knew that you, Denise, would have so much to say, and I was so excited about it because I personally am not super familiar with the history of feminism. I know there's certain aspects of it that benefit me, and I know there's certain aspects of it that don't benefit, that are just being completely abused. But so I was really excited to hear. I was like, okay, Denise is going to bring in the history of it, and I love that. I know that today, even just being a woman, there are a lot of negative stereotypes assigned to the housewife and assigned to the biblical feminine woman, and it's always viewed as the slave. The one in the apron that's at home, never leaves the house, just raises the babies, and that's all she's good for. And I think that men and women, when you read scripture and you really understand the role that women took, even in the Bible, that's what God is expecting us to be. And it's not that. It's not the apron. It's not the making pies. It's not the make. You know what I mean? Like, it can be if that's what you want, but that's not what biblical femininity is. And I love that you're bringing in the history of how it's been so shifted and perverted over time in our modern society, because the reality of it is that we're so, look, it doesn't matter who you are, our system is broken.
Yes.
How our families operate, it's broken, and everyone who's trying to fix it is just making it worse. And we're not bringing it back to what God really established, which is even as my dad taught today, Sunday service, there's the husband who covers the wife, who covers the children. And that's not a bad place to be. It's a very empowering place to be.
Yeah. And even medically, it's crazy because breastfeeding was a huge thing because there's so many benefits to breastfeeding. I mean, you can follow my blog for all that stuff. But what also happened during that feminist movement is that because the women were leaving the workforce, there was a spike in increase. They used that time to start promoting formula instead of breastfeeding, saying that breastfeeding was no longer good, that you could smoke, that da-da-da-da-da. So there was, like I said, there's so many different branches that we can get into. But it's crazy because it takes that one moment of vulnerability they knew how to attack the family unit from such different vantage points that it was like by the time that people opened their eyes, it's like, oh my gosh, there's like 8 different tentacles. Like, which one do we try to now combat as a Christian woman, as a, godly morals principles? So there's just so many different layers of what happened during those times, during that feminist movement time. And it's so crazy to see that it was painted to be such a good thing.
Right.
And it looked good, right? Like, women were empowered. I can go out. I can work. Like, I don't need to depend on a man, and it's fine. But you know who suffered? The children. And it's just like, that wasn't a God thing. You know what I mean? So,
and then it makes sense because then those children grow up into broken adults. And then those broken adults raise more broken children. And the cycle just continues.
Yeah.
Because at no point was there this unit, this family structure that was healthy and good for the home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I've read about that is, again, going back to that, like those eras and stuff, was that things also, because, once I keep referring back to the 1950s, but I feel like in America, that's such a staple moment that a lot of people think of very in an ethereal type of way.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that were happening during that time is that America started becoming booming, right? Like financially, everything was just taking off, technology and all that good stuff. And so what started happening was that life at home started becoming easier for women. And so their daily tasks weren't taking as much time. And so then I read the correlation between back in the day, back in the biblical days, women had to, like the Proverbs 31 woman, she had to, once the season was over of harvesting, she started having to planning the next season, right? So she was always busy. She was always taking care of her home. She was always making sure that her family was taken care of. And so when things started becoming easier, women, instead of turning to God, they started turning to the culture and what the culture was saying. And so it's absolutely right, because they started getting attacked in culture. They started taking an identity in school, whatever the case may be. It was just such a targeted thing. And then we have the rise of the sexual promiscuity, and so all of that in itself just created the perfect incubator for to get us to where we're at now.
And I just want to lay something out before our history buffs come at us. So that wasn't the first feminist movement. Feminist movement had been happening, I guess even from the start of mankind, if you really think about it. Okay. But in the 1800s, it happened also, and I don't think it stuck as much, which is why in the 1960s and 70s, that's when the second feminist movement happened, and that's the one that we're going to be referring to, just because I think we're more familiar with that one. But I just want to make sure that I laid that out before the history buffs come and start talking smack to us. I get it. Feminist movement had happened before in the 1800s, but we're referring to the 60s and 70s when the second one hit, that really, I believe, for our generations, really started to make a huge impact, and we're seeing the detriments of that now.
Yeah, and that's why I said that it started overseas. Yeah. And so then we caught up with the progression of that. Yessie, hello.
Hi. Hi, Yessie. Hi, you guys. I just wanted to add that I know that people have their season, and yes, the world isn't structured for mom to stay home, unfortunately. So especially in California, maybe a different state, but not this state. So I know that's very hard, but of course I do see a lot of people really going back to the Christian, biblical femininity. And I love that, because a lot of people are saying I want to start my own, farm. I want to make my own bread. I want to teach my kids, the Bible, and include it in their homeschool, and be more free and be home, and keep the house as organized as possible with the kids I do have, because, depends on your kids. And then just support their husband and what they can do, and they see their husband empowered. Yeah. And honestly, as a stay-at-home wife and mother myself, coming from corporate, it's not the easiest. But there's so many moments that I'm just it's worth it. It's worth it. I know my daughter it doesn't take a second for me to just guess what she's going through. If I had a babysitter with her all day, not dogging if you have a babysitter for your kid, but if I had a babysitter all day for her, I would take an hour probably to understand what she was trying to do or say or something. And I always tell my husband that, like, I'm with her, so I know her like the back of my hand, I know what she's thinking, and that's a true gift for me.
Yeah.
And I also think that as a woman that stays home, that Proverbs 31 woman, that entrepreneurial woman comes out. I recently was just this morning, or not this morning, a few days ago, I was doing our, my husband and I have an LLC, so we were doing our taxes for it. And I'm the one that does our taxes, right? So I did it all, and then I just had a tax expert just review it this morning. And he was sitting next to me, and she literally said, "Wow, girl, okay." And she was on Zoom, right? And she was like, "Okay, girl." She goes, I'm scared of you. You know about your taxes." And I was like, this is my first year. I'm so nervous. Like, an LLC doing your own taxes, it's very scary. And I'm like, especially because you're just starting off, So lo and behold, my husband's there at the very end. She's like, "No, you did good. Like, I just love an informed tax person, like, or whatever." And she was just hyping me up. And at the very end, after our phone call ended, my husband comes over and he's like, "Wow, Proverbs 31 woman."
Like, I was just going to say, I was like, that is definitely Proverbs.
He's like, "Good job. Like, you handled our like, my husband handles our finances. Don't get me wrong. I don't touch that. He knows I spend it,
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure, like, I have all this in line and I'm helping him. And all of that, he didn't say anything. He's a CEO, but honestly, my husband, he goes to work, so I'm the one that does the filing, does all of these things, and I work on trying to do the little things at home so I can stay home. And I think that's really encouraging for the people, especially like the movement that's happening right now. It's really happening. You're seeing it. A lot of moms getting businesses to stay at home, or that work from home life is happening so they can be with their children. And I love to see that because we're going back to our roots, what we were meant for.
I love that.
Yeah, and what I think I find the most detrimental in that movement is making it for what it looks like today, right? Because I think there's also that offside where it's like, I want to run away and like I want to be in the prairie somewhere. It's like, okay, but that doesn't work for us now, right? And at least that's what I think, right? It's like you have to incorporate what's happening right now and what's in today. Of course, bring it back to the biblical principles, but it's like, okay, how can I make it for it to be not relevant for culture's sake, but relevant with what is God doing on the earth right now, right? And so what I find, and I love that you even said that about, Zariah, about you knowing her, but just being in that, just spending the day with you guys on Friday, like she would pick up things that, little things that I would do when we were playing and stuff. She would repeat words. And so it's just like, okay, if she's doing that with me where I've just spent a few hours with her, how much more with the people that, let's say, babysitting, like you really have to be careful with who's around your children. They may be quote unquote safe with them, but they're also picking up those character traits. And so to me, that's scary, right? And so again, not dogging anybody who's in that situation where they can't work from home, or maybe you may be a single mom, and there's total grace for that.
Absolutely.
Like there, in no way, shape, or form are we intending to make that a bad thing, but that essentially that's the goal, right? And so now what I want to move to is because I think it's really easy or easier to understand the boundaries of being a biblical woman when you're in a relationship, when you're a mother, when you're a wife. But I think when it comes to singleness, it's really hard to understand those boundaries and that walk when you don't function in the home like that, right? And so that's where the Lord is challenging me in this hour, where he's just like drawing that out of me in the season that I'm in right now. And so what do you ladies have to say about that? Like any advice that you can give to the single girls?
Well, Shekinah can start. I mean, she's lived a single Christian life.
I've been my single my whole life. No,
she knows.
Yeah, no, that's always been a hard one for me, because when you are single, especially, so my parents always taught me, and it's actually funny, they're kind of reversing that teaching now, but it's too late. They always taught me and my siblings, like, wait until you get older to get married. Live your life young, like, get educated, get your career, like, travel the world. And that's exactly what me and all my siblings have done. And now we're all, like, reaching 30, and none of us are married. And my parents are like, oh. Like, wait a minute. And so that's a different topic. But in that, you do get to that that sense of like independence. I'm a strong, independent woman, and I'm not totally against the feminist movement. I get to vote. You know what I mean? Like,
of course.
And you start to get this mentality of like, I don't need no man. And I remember when we were roommates, I was actually just thinking about this the other day. Of like we were changing out like a really tall light bulb or something.
Gosh, I love that video.
Yeah, like I don't remember exactly. It was like a light bulb, and like someone made this statement. I don't remember which one of us. Like, oh, who needs a man? And the other one just broke down. We need men. We don't want to do this anymore.
I'm still feeling like that.
I saw a quote, and it goes with what you said, and it's beautiful because it's like, I'm not teaching my daughter not to depend on a man. I'm teaching my daughter what kind of man she can depend on.
Mm-hmm. And that's how I felt. The reason I thought of that video is because I was putting up my shelves the other day, and I was like, I need a freaking husband. Like, I was like, I had my power tools. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm capable.
Right.
And I'm glad that I can. I'm glad that I'm capable. I can change my own tires. I can, build stuff. And my my roommate Ashley used to call me manly all the time because I was the one that would just fix everything in the house. I'm capable of doing these things. But it is shifting from being that strong, independent woman, I don't need a man, to now I know the kind of man that I need based off of my capabilities. Who can I partner with?
Right.
And that's what I'm looking forward to in a marriage, is that I can put that into practice now, of being a capable woman now in my singleness, being the entrepreneur now, because that's what the Proverbs 31 woman is. I think a lot of women overlook that. She's an entrepreneur. She handles the finances. She knows how to clothe her family. She knows how to provide. I think we made the statement before of the husband provides, the woman creates. Like, we take what our husbands make.
The incubator.
Yeah, exactly. And so how that translates into singleness is start learning how to be capable. Get educated, start practicing how we've talked about in previous podcasts. This is a time where you can serve others. This is a time you can get involved in your church. This is a time that you can put into practice that act of servanthood and that act of service and motherhood, and getting involved in your church, getting involved with the people around you, getting involved with your family. Help your mom with the dishes every once in a while. That's a huge deal, and that'll help your mom out. But it really does shift your brain into becoming a servant, so that you can know what true submission, healthy submission, looks like in a marriage in a way that's really going to benefit you and your future spouse.
Yeah.
I agree with that. To me, it's the nurturing part, right? It's like wherever you're in, learn how to nurture. Whether, I'm an admin assistant, so doing that in my office is like, how can I nurture this and bring something good out of it, bring something in life? And so I think what you're saying is exactly right. Like, learning how to function in that in the place that you're in, because I'm sure you've learned how to function in that in so many different realms. It's not just the motherhood. It's not just the wife.
No, because how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah. Yes.
And we, as women, we can create life. That's our gift. It's like our superpower.
Yeah.
So whatever you see in front of you, create life with it. Situations, if there's death in it, there's potential for there to be life. In like job arenas. I mean, in anything, as a single woman, right? You have, so part of the Proverbs 31 woman is the woman can do everything that she does because her husband is established. Yes. So I think we need to lay that first.
Yes.
So the husband is established, and then the woman goes and does what she needs to do. When you're single, you don't have to wait for your husband to be established, because your husband is the creator. Like, y'all are ahead of the game.
Your maker is your husband. Look up the real.
You know what I mean? So because he's already established, then you guys have a better advantage, honestly, of being able to create and to do these things, this entrepreneurial spirit, going out and even with your finances when you're single, because God is your provider. Like, he is on your side. Like, I mean, not that he's not on us, the women that are married, but there's the middleman, which is our husband, and then God. So I think with you guys, because that's already been established, that you guys are able to walk out in those functions in such a beautiful way.
So can I tell you something about that? I agree 100%. However, but no, there's no but what I find to be right, being on social media and just researching what's out there, a lot of women have had this like tough time in finding somebody that would, and I feel like I know what your guys' response is going to be to this, but especially in today's climate, finding somebody that's willing to take that on, because a lot of men are underdeveloped. And so what's hard, right, at least something that I think some women face, is like, dang, like, that's really hard, establishing my life when I don't know what kind of partner I'm gonna end up with. Like, even I have a few friends that I've had this conversation with where it's like, you know, they were kind of just waiting for their life to start until they found their husband.
Right.
Because now that they're establishing themselves, and I mean, even with me, like, you know, me and my roommate, we have a house, we have careers, and it's hard to find somebody to be willing to step up to that plate. And so I'm gonna be quite honest, like, we're kind of met with this double whammy, right? Where it's like, okay, like, yeah, absolutely, build, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, like, and I'm not saying diminish that at all, but then there's this caveat where a lot of men are like, well, she's strong and independent, like, I don't know that I can come in with that. And so at least with me, I think that's why, and I mean, throwing myself out there, right? But for the sake of conversation, I think that's why the Lord is like learning to soften, right, a certain aspect, because it's not success for the sake of success,
right?
It's success for the sake to build. So I know at the beginning for me, like, when I started getting my degree, when we even started thinking about this house, one of the conversations that me and my roommate had were like, well, what does this mean for us? Like, what does this mean when it comes to relationships? What does it mean for that? And so one thing that we started doing, it's like, okay, well, we're doing this obviously first and foremost onto the Lord, right. But secondly, it's already working towards that partnership with the husband, right? And so it's like, so when that person comes in, the right man is going to be like, that's amazing. Like, you were building while you were doing this, while you were single, you were building and doing that. But it's still very hard to find that caliber of man. Yeah. And so talk to me.
So what's your question? So what's the question?
My question is, what would you say to those girls that are, I mean, I know that I kind of went on that tangent, but what would you say to those girls that are feeling discouraged or like, well, I don't know if I should step out or stay stuck? Like, what would you ladies say? Yes.
Well, first, okay, so there's a lot to do with your gifting and your calling too, because sometimes your entrepreneurial spirit or your go-getter spirit is part of your gifting, or you do things already. So let's say that you're gifted in business, right? And you're starting off with like real estate already. I think that's a powerful thing. And then the person that is into business and will see that too and say, wow, she's a real go-getter. She's into business already. I love that. That type of mindset will attract that mindset. Somebody who isn't into that and intimidated, I highly doubt that's somebody that you're going to want to be even a contester, right? Because they're going to be, you're going to have to push them. And I just want you to know that when you are the go-getter and your husband you have to push him, you're going to start sounding like his mother. You know, that's not somebody you're going to want to be with. You're going to want someone that you can build an empire with, and so that they can see your gifting, your calling, and seeing like, wow, you can do this. I want to be a part of that. I want to build with you too. That's or, hey, you don't know. Maybe you might find somebody with a few more properties than you know.
Yeah, what up?
But that's just something I wouldn't say for women to feel discouraged, because you also don't want to be rescued. You're not a princess like in Shrek, Fiona, you know. You don't need to wait for Shrek to come save you.
Out of all the ones that's
only because I recently saw it with my daughter.
That's a great movie. It has a lot of good messages.
It's amazing and so funny. But she was waiting for Prince Charming, and she gets Shrek, right?
That'll preach.
but Shrek is everything she wanted, you know. But anyways, so you don't want to sound like that princess that's just waiting for someone to save you. You don't want to be like, you know, I really have this calling and I have the capability financially to do these moves and to make these entrepreneurial girl boss moves, right? I'm just gonna sit here though. That is not right. That is, because how are you glorifying God, and then how are you doing what you're called to do also, because some of us are called to do things out of our situations.
And I think it's all sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think it's the way you approach it, right? Like, I'm a very strong female. My husband is a very strong male. Like, I was doing me, he was doing him. But when we both came together, we knew how to work together.
Yeah, that's perfect.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I didn't stop building just because I was afraid of a man being intimidated. Like, then that's not the man I want.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, the Lord knew, and even my family says it, like, they needed somebody to come and put you, you know, to calm me down. But because I was put you in line, and I was scared to say certain words. But no, in all honesty, like, I was doing me. I was not afraid. And I'm not saying I was this successful corporate person, but I was always pursuing myself, like education wise, like, you know, although I knew I wanted to be married and have kids, that didn't stop me from growing as an individual. And thank God that I found the man that was willing to come alongside me and be willing to work with me together, right?
Good,
so
yeah.
when the guy is coming toward or to you, if he's not willing to work with you or with your strong character and whatnot, then that's on him. But it also is on you to make it known that you're willing to be a team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's also, okay, I'm strong, but I also know that I would love nothing more than to have a companion in you.
Yeah.
So there has to be this beautiful blend of I'm strong, but I can also be strong with you.
Yeah.
Does that make
No,
sense?
that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And I said this to somebody today, and I want to say it like, God already put a price tag on you. Don't let man come and reduce that price tag.
No, absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
And I think for me, what brings me peace as far as marriage is the man that God has called you to marry is on the path that God called you to pursue.
Yeah.
And if you stand back
really
going, I'm not gonna, move forward with this career. I'm not gonna move forward going to college or getting this education,
Right.
or I'm not gonna move forward with my life essentially because I want to experience it with a man. Well, your man's already down this path. He's already maybe he's at the school that God's telling you to go to.
Yeah.
Maybe he's in that career that God is calling you to be. But if you're back here, like you said, you're just back here waiting for Prince Charming, Shrek is going to come along and you're going to be really shocked. You're
He
not
did the
gonna
work,
accept
though.
that. Yeah.
Shrek did the work.
Exactly. But
For somebody else.
that's what brings me peace is when God says, hey, go over here. And I don't do it because I'm like, oh,
Right.
maybe my husband's
Yeah.
over there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, no, I don't have that mindset at all.
Yeah.
But it brings me peace to continue moving forward with what I know God has for me, because what God has for me is down the road, whether it's a man or something else entirely.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is I'm pursuing God and I'm letting God fill in the gaps. But that's what brings me peace ultimately, is if you're called to be married, you're called to be married, just know that your husband's going to be in the place that God called you to be. So you
Right.
need to work to get to that place.
Yeah.
That's really good. And something that the Lord just showed me recently was just on that same vein, right? Because I mean, obviously I agree with what you ladies are saying, but I know that there can come that temptation to settle, right?
Yeah.
That temptation to kind of just forfeit and be like, okay, like I'll take
Well,
it.
strong women often will make the mistake of marrying potential.
Yeah, and so then what the Lord was showing me was, and it's going to sound, I hope it doesn't sound like hyperbolic or whatever, but in the same vein that, you're saying that motherhood is a calling and all of that, it's like, okay, but the person that is going to marry you and the person that you're married to, you are literally the only person with that calling. You are literally the only person that can serve that person in that way, and that is the only person that can serve you in that way. And so then the Lord was showing me the great emphasis that there is on that, and I'm like, wow, like, we're, and when I say we're, I mean generally speaking, broad brush. It's like so many people are willing to forfeit that for the sake of companionship in that moment, not understanding the high price that there is on your life, right? That high price that there is for you. Like if Jesus himself gave his life on the cross just to have you,
Right.
just to reintroduce that intimacy with you, how much more is the person that is supposed to marry you on this earth should pay that price, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not saying like make yourself like this girl that's like weird or this man that's like super weird where she's like, oh, you blah, blah, blah. But definitely have some standards, definitely have that value,
Right.
and definitely have that that place and that characteristic. And I just really wanted to just make sure that we touched on that, because biblical femininity, it requires a sense of boundaries and standards, right? Not letting yourself be taken by the tide. And I feel like at some point it can get definitely can get difficult,
Right.
but it's standing strong and standing on the Lord and just understanding the high value.
Right.
I think you summed it up perfectly. So with that being said, is there anything that you ladies would like to add to this table?
I did. The story with Rebecca and Isaac really is something that I love to hear. And I think it can go back to answering your question. Rebecca went to the water, right? And she was giving water to not only Abraham's servant, but for his camels. And she did it out of compassion. And she just, she didn't know that I'm going to go over here and find a man,
Right.
She never did that. But she went out and she did her job and she did what she was supposed to do. And when she went out there, she, the goodness of her heart, right? She went out and she said, I'm going to give you guys water. But she didn't say, I'm just going to give you water to the servant. She gave it to the camel. And it wasn't like, I'm just going to give you guys a cup of water.
Yeah.
It was, I'm going to give you guys water till you guys are done. Like,
That's good. I
To the
never thought
brim.
of it
just
that way.
think about it. She's just like grabbing more and grabbing more for the camels, and these camels must have been thirsty. And so then the Abraham servant, he goes and he's like, this is the one. She answered the sign. And so then they go and then they give all this stuff to the family, and they're like, she's for Isaac. Obviously, she already knows, like, I'm going to be, meeting somebody. Like, she's totally game for it. She's like, take me now. Like,
I'm sick of this water.
yeah, but she didn't go there and saying like, oh, woe is me. Where's my man? I'm going to go find somebody. No, she just did what she was called to do in her singleness, and she went out
so
there,
good.
and she wasn't doing things to find a man, but she was doing what she was called to do.
Yeah.
And so that's something that would answer your question too.
That's fire.
I agree, 100%.
That's so good.
Anything else any of you would like to add?
No, it just reminds me of my story with my husband.
continues moving.
I was like, the man who sends me pink roses to my job just because is a man I'm gonna marry. My husband sent me pink roses a few months after we were dating, and he literally put on the card just because. And I hadn't said that to anybody, like only God. And so when I got pink roses and they said just because, I was like, I'm gonna marry this guy. That's it. But it reminded me of that just because.
Yeah,
Sorry,
because you're just minding your business.
Yeah.
You're doing it. And also the other part was about like not being intimidated. You might be surprised because the man that's for you, you might be like, how is this going to correlate with me, right? Like for myself, I'm very artistic, and I know my husband is too. But I can go into places and I see the transformation already.
Yes.
I'm all about the transformation. My husband is a very visual person, so he can see transformation too, but not to that extent. So looking for homes with this guy was the hardest thing. Okay, you guys, I would look at houses, I'm like, cut down that wall, do this, do that, and he's like, no, I just want to move in ready house. Like, well, I don't see this, I don't get it. When he saw the work that like I come from a family of construction, so when he sees the work that my family has done, he's like, wow, now I get your vision.
Yeah.
Okay, now we bought a house. We completely demolished everything inside of it. Like, we started fresh, new ceilings, new paint. There's like only one painted wall that's still the old color of the house. That's it. All floorings changed. Everything's changed. Okay, you guys? And it was all to my vision. I literally walked in there and I said, we're doing this, we're doing that. And he says, as long as I can choose the shower, like, that's it. Like, you call rain on everything else. So I'm like, okay, tear down this wall. I want this island. I want this. I chose all of it. Tell me why. He's like, man, babe, I gave you the finances and you created this.
Yeah.
He's like, you created this. Like, we are such a great partnership. Like, we have such a great partnership. And I'm like, thank you for believing in me.
Yeah.
Because imagine if my husband's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, no, we're not even going to spend money on that.
Yeah.
It just makes you like very cautious. Like, you really want to be careful who you say yes to, and settling would not make you feel like you're in a partnership, but in like a servant, like in a
dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and even in conversation with Andre, right? We've talked about this before, how you guys were like, how you were all about it from the very beginning. And Dre was like, but it was when he heard from the Lord and he was able to see your future together that made him commit, right? It wasn't just what he saw in the immediate. It was, what could God do through this, right? Yeah. And I think that that's what's crucial, because it's true, like where you guys were in that moment, it may not have seemed like it was compatible, but as he looked towards the future and now he's seeing it all unravel, it makes sense, right? Yeah. So sometimes, and we've heard this story before, like different stories where it's like God was like, no, this is a good person for you, like go ahead and pursue it. And it's just like, because, and we've said it before, like, marriages are kingdom. They're intended with a calling. They're intended with a purpose. And so when we move past what's going on right now and look into what can God create from this, I think that's when it allows you to shape what kind of partner you should look for, right? It's like, who do you want to multiply with? Who do you want to amplify? And both men and women have that ability. It's like, men, who do you want to not just protect, but who do you want to steward your life? And then for women, whose life do you want to amplify? And one thing that I'll leave you guys with, just so we can cut it off today, but one thing that I want to leave you guys with, women have been attacked so much, with the area of abortion and all this stuff, like literally coming against the very design that we have, like to bring life into this world. And one quote that I read was, society has tried to demolish the woman as a mother. And the way that they phrased it was so stunning to me, because she was like, how dare they do that when a mother is tasked with the ability of bringing a soul into this earth, literally raising a soul that's going to live forever. And I was like, oh my gosh, because we look at the 80 years, right? They're going to be here for 80 years. Or we look at the 18 years when they're right here in front of us and we're raising these children. But these are eternal souls that we get to birth on into this world. And that to me is such a stunning remark, because it's like, wow, we look at kids, we look at them in the immediate, where it's like the changing diapers, the time, the sleepless nights, or the worrying, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it's just like, but when you look at it in the grand scheme of eternity, oh my gosh, right? It's such a calling. Such a calling. And then for men, for you to be entrusted with taking care of that soul, with providing for that soul, for literally being a depiction of who God is for us on this earth, like that to me is profound. That to me, it just brings in the father and the mother role into such a cinematic point of view, where it's like, wow, like this is beautiful. Like the original design that God had for the family, the very first thing that God said to the world is to Adam and Eve was, have dominion over this earth and multiply it, because God wanted his creation to dwell with him. And so, when you think about those things, if you look at children, you're like, I don't know if I could ever do this. It's like, you were created with that purpose. God gives grace, God gives mercy. And so I just wanted to make sure we touched on that, because abortion was literally created to attack the woman and attack the human race. And so that's all I want to say about that. Anything else, ladies?
Go to the Walk for Life.
Oh yeah, go to the Walk for Life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, share what that is.
Oh yeah. So March 23rd, it's a Saturday. We're gonna do a Walk for Life through CareNet. It's one of the resource centers that I actually volunteer at. It's amazing. It's an amazing organization. You guys can reach out to me. I'll give you guys more information. But we are doing a Walk for Life, and basically it's just bringing oh my gosh, what's the word? Bringing recognition, awareness. Thank you. Bringing awareness to just the pro-life movement, and honestly also raising funds to basically fund the CareNet Center out here in Lancaster. It is an amazing organization. We do amazing things. We help women and men, families, from a moment that they walk in and they're not sure, about the pregnancy. We give them, options such as, showing them the ultrasound, and then even giving them parenting lessons, and there's just so much. We're with them for over 2 years, and it is just such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place and organization. So yeah, March 23rd, you guys can go onto my blog. We'll put all the information on there so you guys can check that out.
Yep.
And you can go to her blog on www.yourmommyfriend.com.
Thanks. Yes. Thanks for the plug. Thanks for the plug, guys.
We're going to charge you for that.
Yeah, but yes. And I just want to add to that when talking about abortion, because I know I can go on this for years. Yeah. Years, months. But when you abort a baby, not only as women, right? If you're aborting a baby, you're doing much more than that, because as women, we're called to mother, to nurture. So if you can't mother and nurture a child, you can't do that for your city. You can't do that for your state. You can't do that in anything that you do, because how you do one thing is how you do another thing. And I'm not saying that there's not forgiveness. I know that firsthand that when you repent, there is. But if they can get women to abort the very calling that they have, then they honestly affect every aspect of society in so many different ways, because then you live with the shame, the guilt, the condemnation, and you can't even do effectively the other things that you're called to do, because you're always carrying that until you release it and until you let it go. And the Proverbs 31 woman does state to be political if you study that scripture out. You know what I mean? So you're supposed to go out into the city, you're supposed to go out into politics, you are called to do that. But so aborting your baby, it's much more than just of course it's the baby, it's a soul, but it really trickles down to every aspect of your life.
I agree, 100%.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just wanted to share that.
No, I agree, 100%. And ladies, Ken?
It's all great.
It's all good.
It's all great.
I hope you guys take the time to meditate on that story that Yessie shared about Isaac and Rebecca, right?
Yeah, I never looked at it from that perspective.
Because so that is a really stunning story. And if you read the entire, just the story on Genesis is beautiful. So definitely look it up. It is in Genesis.
I think it's Genesis 24, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure, but it's definitely in Genesis. So definitely read that. It's really good, very Holy Spirit led.
Yeah.
And I think that would actually bring a lot of healing to a lot of women and and men, right? To just remember It's about God and His will. So, with that being said, we talked about biblical femininity, yes, but we definitely went on a few different bunny trails.
Bunny trails holes. Yeah.
I'm just proud that I got through this. So thank you guys for tuning in. Stay tuned for some awesome changes coming up for In the Vine. We are very excited to announce those things, and we're excited to connect with you. And also the day of the March 23rd, we're also going to be at the Fit Fiesta that I think we've already advertised, and we're going to be there. So make sure that you show up, connect with us, and let's have some fun.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Pray for your single friends. We keep forgetting stuff. No, really, pray for your single friends. It's hard out here.
For sure.